When my dad called me that Sunday morning, his voice sounded weaker than usual. He told me his medical bills had piled up, something about the insurance not covering a few procedures. I didn't think twice. He's my dad. I told him I'd send what I could. At the time, I had just finished paying off my car loan. I wasn't exactly comfortable financially, but I had a bit saved up. So I transferred $2,900 from my savings to my mom's account, just like Dad asked. She said they'd use it to catch up on his medical stuff and maybe some overdue utilities. That call made me feel good, like I was finally doing something meaningful for them. I was the only one of their 3 kids who lived nearby, and I'd always been the responsible one. My sister, Dana, moved to Texas years ago, and my brother, Kyle, was still figuring his life out somewhere between jobs. I didn't mind helping. I thought that's what family was for. A week later, Mom texted me a few updates about the bills. I asked for receipts, just out of habit, not suspicion, and she said, "Don't worry, honey, we're keeping track of everything." I believed her. Then 3 weeks passed. No mention of Dad's condition, no talk about the bills. When I called, they were always on the other line or heading out. I didn't push. I just assumed they were busy or trying to stay positive. The truth landed in my lap by accident. It was a Thursday night. I'd just gotten home from work when I opened Facebook. Dana had posted a photo, one of those big smiling group shots. Everyone looked sunburned and happy, standing on the deck of a cruise ship. The caption said, "Family trip, much needed vacation with the best people ever, Red Heart." At first, I smiled. Then my brain processed the details. There was my mom in sunglasses and a floppy hat, Dad next to her holding a drink with a tiny umbrella, and Kyle laughing behind them. I froze. I scrolled through the photos again and again, trying to make sense of it. My family on a cruise, without me. The comments were full of hearts and compliments. "You all look amazing. So glad you finally took that trip." Trip? What trip? I called my mom immediately. She didn't answer. Then I called again and again. Finally, Dad picked up. His tone was casual, too casual. "Hey, kiddo, what's up?" "What's up?" I repeated. "You're on a cruise." He paused. "Oh, yeah, it was kind of last minute. Dana surprised us, you know how she is." "Dana surprised you," I said, feeling my stomach twist. "With what money, Dad?" He hesitated, and that silence told me everything. "I thought the $2,900 was for your medical bills." "It was," he said quickly. "But then things got sorted out. Insurance covered more than we thought. So your mom figured, maybe we could do something nice for the family for once." "For once?" My voice cracked. "I sent you my savings so you wouldn't have to stress about medical bills, and you used it to go on a cruise." "Don't make it sound like that," he said, defensive now. "We needed a break. You're always working, you wouldn't have come anyway." That hit harder than it should have. "Wouldn't have come," I repeated slowly. "You didn't even tell me." "Look," he said, "it's done. We'll talk when we're back, all right." Then he hung up. I sat there on my couch, phone still in my hand, staring at the black screen. That night, I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw their smiling faces on that deck, spending my money, pretending everything was fine. Over the next few days, they posted more pictures, cocktails, buffets, sunsets. I didn't comment. I didn't text. I just watched. When they came back, Mom called, acting like nothing had happened. "How are you, sweetheart?" she asked. "I'm great," I said flatly. "How was the cruise?" "Oh, it was lovely. It's been years since we did something like that as a family." "As a family," I repeated, my voice colder than I intended. She must have sensed the tone shift because her voice softened. "Don't be upset. We would have loved to have you come along, but we didn't want to bother you with planning and time off." "Yeah," I said. "You didn't bother me with telling me either." There was silence on the other end. Then she sighed. "We just thought, after everything, it'd be nice to do something together. You help us so much, and we wanted to have one little thing without guilt." Without guilt, that phrase stuck with me. After we hung up, I sat there for a long time, staring at my laptop, I wasn't angry in the loud, explosive way. It was quieter, colder. The kind of anger that organizes itself step by step. They thought I'd just forget. That I'd accept being the one who helps, who gives, who stays behind while they enjoy themselves. They were wrong. By the time I opened a new spreadsheet on my computer, I already knew what I was going to do. I wasn't going to yell or confront them again. I wasn't going to beg for the truth or an apology. I was going to make sure they learned what it feels like to be left out, completely and without warning. When I opened the spreadsheet that morning, I filled the first column with dates and the second with amounts. I titled the sheet transfers Mom. It felt petty, but it made sense. If I was going to do this, I needed facts, not feelings. First step was simple. I downloaded my bank statement. The $2,900 transfer sat there in black and white, clear as a fingerprint. Next, I scrolled back through their Facebook photos and saved every image from the cruise, timestamps, locations, captions. The receipts came next. I knew Mom always kept hotel and pharmacy slips in that little floral tin on the sideboard, so I drove over under the pretense of dropping off groceries. She was in the kitchen when I walked in, humming like nothing had happened. I opened the tin casually and took photos of the contents with my phone, then left without saying more than a hello. Back home, I lined everything up. The transfer record, the cruise photos with timestamps, the receipts from the tin showing dates that overlapped the cruise. I added a column in the spreadsheet with short notes. No insurance claim filed. No copy paid. Cruise payment shown. The more I looked, the less defensible their story became. I didn't plan to act alone. If this was going to be more than a private grudge, I needed the others to know the truth and to be forced to decide how to respond. I messaged Dana and Kyle separately and asked them to come over that evening. I didn't explain why. Dana arrived first, with a carry-out bag and the tired air of a woman who'd been running on coffee. She gave me a quick hug and asked what was wrong. Kyle showed up 30 minutes later, late and apologetic, but quiet when I shut the door behind him. I put my phone on the table and slid the spreadsheet across. "I'm not yelling," I said. "I want you to see this." They skimmed. Dana's face went slack, Kyle's jaw tightened. When they reached the cruise photos, Dana let out a sound that was neither laugh nor cry. "How long have you known?" she asked. 3 weeks, I said. I kept waiting to hear something that made it make sense. There isn't one. There was a pause long enough for the walls of the apartment to feel closer. Dana swallowed. "I knew about the cruise," she admitted. "I paid for some of it. I thought it was just a surprise and they gave me the money back in cash. I didn't think I'm sorry." Her eyes dropped to the table. Kyle was the quieter one. "I didn't know about the $2,900, he said. "I saw the pictures on Facebook like you did. I should have called you. I'm sorry." I expected anger, accusations, an argument full of old lines about who contributed what and who was the favorite. Instead, the three of us calculated the fallout together. Dana admitted she'd handed some cash to Mom to help with shore excursions and had never asked where the money came from. Kyle confessed he'd assumed Mom had sorted the bills. None of it changed the truth of the transfer, but it shifted the power. They hadn't intended maliciousness. They'd been careless and complicit. That made the next steps clearer. We agreed on 2 things. First, we would confront Mom and Dad together in person with the evidence. Second, we would make sure the conversation was civil and documented. Revenge, in my head, stopped being a dramatic public spectacle and started being a practical correction, one that had consequences they couldn't weasel out of. The next afternoon, we sat in their living room. Mom made tea. Dad read the paper like he hadn't seen the 3 of us waiting. I felt the spreadsheet in my jacket pocket like a small weapon. I spoke first, calm and direct. "We know about the cruise," I said. I put the printed bank statement on the coffee table. Then I set down the photos, the receipts, the note about no insurance claim. I watched them read. Mom's face drained. Dad's hand trembled on the paper. They both started with the same tactic, confusion, then denial, then a story about insurance covering more than they'd expected. I let them talk until their words started to fray. When they paused, Dana said, "We're not here for excuses. We're here to figure out what happens next." Kyle had an idea: repayment. He suggested a realistic schedule for them to return the money without forcing them into destitution. Dana, more practical, wanted a written agreement and a freeze on any large purchases until the debt was repaid. I wanted an apology, not theatrics, just a clear acknowledgement that they had lied. Dad refused at first. He called it petty and said we were humiliating them. Mom cried and said they'd meant no harm, that they wanted one thing for themselves after years of putting us first. I listened, and then I said what I thought would be the hard line. We can tolerate mistakes. We won't tolerate lies that waste our money and our trust. They argued. We were firm. In the end, they agreed to a repayment plan and to keep all medical receipts and insurance paperwork in a folder we could review together monthly. They promised to be transparent for a year. Dana and Kyle insisted that any future major purchases be discussed with us beforehand. That wasn't the whole of my revenge. I wanted them to feel the social consequence of their choice, the thing I'd felt when I saw them smiling on that deck. So I did a simple, quiet thing. I stopped volunteering for their problems. When Mom asked me to pick up prescriptions or to be on call for appointments, I set boundaries. I scheduled my life with less flexibility. I told friends and a few close relatives the truth, calmly and without malice, so that if Mom tried to paint the picture of sacrificial parents and negligent kids, there would be other versions ready. It worked the way I expected. My parents lost the easy out they'd relied on, the assumption that I would always be available and always forgiving. They had to manage their own logistics for the first time in years. They found they had to tighten budgets in ways they hadn't imagined. The family dinners were colder for a while. There were awkward moments, yes, and I felt some guilt over that. But guilt is not the same as being used. 3 months into the repayment plan, Dad called me about a follow-up doctor's appointment. His voice was quieter than the day he'd used the money. "Are you free Tuesday?" he asked. "I am," I said, "but I'll need you to text me the time and address, and let's keep the receipts in the folder like we agreed." There was a short, unsteady sigh on the line, and then, "Okay, thank you." When the debt was halfway paid, Mom wrote me an email, short, formal, apologetic in a way that felt earned. She said she was sorry for taking advantage of my trust, for lying, and for not thinking of how her choice would look from my side. Dad followed with a handwritten note that said simply he understood why I'd reacted the way I did, and that he'd been ashamed of letting things get so out of hand. The inconvenience I'd caused them was the point. Not cruelty, not spectacle, just the removal of an automatic safety net. I wanted them to understand that my help had a price: honesty. Once they learned that lesson, the worst of the anger loosened into something quieter, distance with terms. A year later, the debt was cleared. The folder stayed where it was. We still had family dinners, but they were different. Fewer assumptions, more planning, no last-minute money requests. My relationship with them wasn't restored to how it had been. It was steadier, guarded. I didn't get a grand apology or a big, cinematic reconciliation. I got receipts, a note, and the small, practical change of behavior I had insisted on. That was enough. My revenge wasn't vindictive. It was corrective. They lost the freedom to treat me as an automatic lender. I lost the feeling that my generosity meant nothing. The cost was repairing trust the long way by enforcing boundaries and expecting accountability. In the end, I felt lighter, not because I'd punished them, but because I had stopped being invisible in my own family. I kept the spreadsheet. I closed it with the final payment highlighted in green and then saved a copy in a folder labeled Family Financials. It felt mundane and final. The last line read simply, "Paid in full." Next story. I remember the smell of cinnamon and pine that morning. My mom always overdid Christmas, covering every flat surface with glittering decor. The coffee table looked like a department store display, wrapping paper everywhere, bows, mugs of cocoa. We were all in the living room: Mom, Dad, my sister Jenna, her boyfriend, and me. Jenna sat cross-legged in front of the tree, perfectly made up at 9 in the morning, hair curled like she'd been filmed for a commercial. She's always been that way, effortless, confident, somehow glowing even in sweatpants. I'm quieter. I work long hours as a medical billing coordinator, not glamorous, but steady. We'd been taking turns opening gifts. Mom had that look she got when she was proud of herself, chin lifted, eyes darting between us, waiting for reactions. Jenna unwrapped her main present last. The box was big, white, with a ribbon that looked professionally tied. When she peeled off the lid, she gasped. "Oh my God," she said, pulling out a cream-colored Gucci handbag. It gleamed even under the dim Christmas lights. "Do you like it?" Mom asked, pretending not to already know the answer. "Are you kidding?" Jenna stood up, clutching it like a newborn. "This is insane. It's the one I showed you last month." Dad smiled, proud. "We wanted you to have something nice. You've been working so hard at your marketing job." She had started that job 3 months ago. Meanwhile, I'd been working full-time for 7 years, helping them cover small things, Dad's prescriptions, Mom's broken washing machine, their internet bills when they fell behind. I didn't expect anything grand in return. But when Mom reached under the tree and handed me an envelope, I expected at least thoughtfulness. It was a card, a small, plain red card. Inside, there was a folded piece of paper with 2 words in ballpoint pen, "Merry Christmas," and a $2 bill taped inside. At first, I thought it was some kind of joke, a treasure hunt gift or a hint at something else. But Mom smiled faintly, and Dad nodded, as if they'd done something sweet. Jenna looked awkward. "Oh, that's cute," she said softly, adjusting her new handbag strap. I laughed a little, thinking maybe there was another envelope or something under the tree I hadn't opened. But that was it. Mom said, "You've always said you prefer simple things. I thought the card would be meaningful." Meaningful, a $2 bill taped to a folded card. I tried to play along. "Yeah," I said, forcing a smile. "Meaningful." But my chest burned. The rest of the morning went by in a blur, Dad making pancakes, Jenna snapping pictures of her bag, Mom asking if she should post them online. Every so often, one of them said something like, "We didn't know what to get you, you're so hard to shop for," or "You're practical, you don't like flashy things." I nodded, stayed polite, and went home early. That night, I sat on my couch, staring at the card on the table. The thing that stung wasn't the money, it was the message behind it. They didn't think I was worth more than a gesture. It wasn't about fairness, it was about value. I didn't sleep much. The next day, I went to work, pretending everything was fine. But it stuck in my head like a splinter. Every time someone mentioned family or holidays, it pulsed. 2 days later, I called Jenna. "Hey," she said, cheerful as always. "Did you talk to Mom today?" "No," I said. "Why?" "They're going on that New Year's trip to Colorado. Mom said they're covering the cabin for everyone." "Everyone?" "Yeah, me, Ryan, them. You're coming, right?" No one had mentioned it to me, not once. I said, "No one invited me." "Oh," she hesitated. "I'm sure they just assumed you were busy. You work a lot." "Yeah," I said quietly. "Maybe." After I hung up, I sat still for a long time. Then I opened my laptop. It wasn't about the bag anymore. It wasn't about the card. It was about a pattern that had been going on for years. Jenna getting attention, praise, help, money. Me getting silence. I'd covered their bills, run errands, fixed things around the house. They never asked her for help because, as Mom once said, "She's not as responsible as you." They used my reliability as a reason to neglect me. So I decided that night that I wasn't going to yell or cry. I was going to act, quietly. I started by going through my phone, text threads, payment records, messages from Mom asking for a quick transfer until payday. There were 12 of them over the past year. Groceries, a car repair, Dad's medication. Altogether, about $1,700. I listed every amount, every date, and every "thank you, honey, we'll pay you back soon." They never had. Then I called the pharmacy the next morning to check something. I'd been paying for Dad's blood pressure medication through an online auto-renew I'd set up months ago. The account was under my name, billed to my card. I canceled it. When Mom texted me that night, "Hey, can you refill Dad's meds? They're running low," I replied. You'll need to update your own payment info. It's your account now." She didn't answer for hours. When she finally did, it was one line. "Okay, we'll take care of it." It felt strange, doing that, like cutting a thread that had been holding something together for too long. Over the next few days, I stopped responding to their casual texts, their little, "Can you check something online for us?" or "Can you help fix the printer?" messages. I stayed polite but detached. They noticed. Then New Year's came. I saw Jenna's photos on Instagram. Snow, champagne, the same Gucci bag in every shot. I looked at the card again, still sitting on my table. The $2 bill had slipped halfway out. That's when I decided I wasn't just going to ignore them. I was going to make them face what they'd done. I wasn't sure how yet, but I knew exactly where I'd start. And that would be when they got back from Colorado. They came back from Colorado on a Sunday afternoon. The house smelled like leftover peppermint and wet jackets. Jenna posted 24 photos before they'd even unpacked, laughing on the slopes, toasting by a fireplace, the Gucci bag peeking in nearly every frame. I stayed upstairs until the hubbub downstairs died down, then went down with a folder in my hand. When Mom saw me, she opened her arms like nothing had happened. "There you are! Did you miss us?" she asked, bright and a little too casual. I set the folder on the kitchen island and zipped it shut without a word. Dad looked up from the paper, eyebrows lifting. Jenna beamed with that half-apologetic grin people use when they know they aren't entirely blameless but don't want a lecture. "You okay?" she asked. I let the silence sit until it felt big enough. Then I opened the folder and pulled out a printed list, dates, amounts, short notes. Every time over the past year I'd transferred money, paid a bill, or covered a purchase for them. Next to each line, I clipped a copy of the bank transfer confirmation or the charge receipt. I slid the stack toward Mom. "Is this an audit?" Dad said, confused. "It's a record," I said, "of what I've paid for this family when no one else would." My voice was steady. "It adds up to $1,700 this year. I taped the $2 bill to the front so you could see what your priorities were last week." I put the card on top of the folder, the $2 bill still visible. Mom's smile thinned. "Honey, you know we didn't mean." "You didn't mean to make me feel like I'm not part of the family." I cut in. "You didn't mean to make me the joke in front of Jenna. You didn't mean to assume I'd never want to come on a trip." I looked at them both, and for the first time I felt free saying things I'd held in for years. But that's what happened. Jenna's face lost its glow. "We bought the bag because she's starting a new job," Mom said quickly. "We wanted to celebrate her." "She's not the only one who started something new," I said. "I got a promotion in March. You heard about it at the dinner table and then forgot to congratulate me. It's not about gifts. It's about how you make choices about who you value." Dad rubbed his forehead. "We thought you'd understand. You're always helping us. We didn't want to burden you." "You already considered me a burden," I replied. "The card said it plain. The trip said it plain." I tapped the printed list. "I don't want to keep being the family ATM. I've done enough. I'm asking for 2 things and I want straight answers." They both leaned in, wary. "1, I want you to start returning the money you owe me. Not as a lecture, not with tears, but on paper, a schedule we all sign. 2, I want invitations to be real. If you plan something I'm expected to be at, tell me. Don't assume I won't come." Mom's eyes were wet, but her voice was practical. "How much do we owe you now?" I gave the final number. Dad's mouth tightened. "We can manage that," he said slowly, "but we can't pay it all back at once." "Then make a plan," I said. "A written one, monthly payments. No excuses, no slipping it under the rug." I slid a blank notepad and a pen across the island. "Write it now." There was a long, embarrassed silence while they whispered about household budgets and tightening up. Jenna watched, guilt finally pulling her expression down. She reached out and touched my arm. "I should have said something earlier," she murmured. "I didn't realize." We drafted the schedule right there. The numbers were realistic, not punitive, just firm. They agreed to automatic transfers on the 10th of each month. They agreed to share medical, insurance, and major purchase receipts in a folder I could access. Mom's voice was small when she signed the agreement. "I'm sorry. I didn't think. I should have thought." Apology alone wouldn't have fixed the pattern, but it mattered that they acknowledged the harm. I wanted change I could count, not promises I'd hear and forget. The plan gave me that measurement. Over the next few weeks, I kept my distance while monitoring the agreed steps. I declined their handyman requests. I stopped answering texts about quick favors. When Mom asked me if I could pick up a prescription one afternoon, I replied, "I can if you confirm the transfer went through. If it didn't, you'll need to call the pharmacy and put your card on file." Her reply came 10 minutes later. "Done, thank you." Naturally, this produced friction. There were days when family dinners were awkward and Dad muttered about my hardness. I let those comments happen. I'd long been the default, and default kindness had become a disguise for being taken for granted. Revering that meant enduring some short-term discomfort in exchange for long-term respect. 3 months later, the first repayment landed in my account. It was small, but on time. The second month arrived like clockwork. In the fourth month, Dad called me in the evening. "I want to take you out this Saturday," he said haltingly. "Just you, I want to talk." We met at a diner we used to go to when I was a kid. He ordered coffee and a pie to split, something humble like his mood. He didn't make excuses. He said he'd been embarrassed and selfish, that he hadn't realized how his actions looked from the other side. He said he wanted to do better, not because I demanded it, but because he wanted to. He reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "It took losing your automatic help for us to see how it felt," he admitted. "That's on me." I told him I didn't want a performance. I wanted steady behavior. He agreed. We didn't tidy everything in one conversation, but we documented small steps, shared financial transparency, agreed upon invites, and strict adherence to the repayment schedule. I felt some of the tightness in my chest ease. That was all I had asked for. By the time the last payment posted, exactly 9 months after we signed the plan, things had changed. Mom signed the final transfer with tears, but the tone was different, less defensive, more resigned, and oddly grateful for the structure. Jenna started asking to be included in planning family events. She apologized more than once, quietly and without fanfare. Dad stopped expecting me to fix every problem without asking. My revenge wasn't dramatic. I didn't shout, I didn't spread gossip, I didn't humiliate anyone publicly. I cut off the unpaid labor they'd assumed was mine and made them live with the consequences of managing their own lives. The repayment was a result of that shift, not the goal. What mattered was that the pattern had stopped. On the last day the transfers cleared, I taped the $2 bill back into the Christmas card and put it in the folder. Underneath, I added a short note in my handwriting. Respect is earned. Trust is maintained. I filed everything away. We still have tense moments. We still disagree. But the automatic expectations are gone. When I get invited now, it's because they want me there, not because they counted on me to be there. That's the change that mattered. The house smells like regular family life again, not like obligations no one owned. I go to their dinners by choice, and when I leave, I feel seen. I kept one small rule. I never counted the meals, the errands, or the time I gave them after that. I only counted the respect. That's what made the difference. Next story. When my sister, Melissa, told me to pack my things and get out, I thought she was joking. We'd been living together for 6 months in her 2-bedroom townhouse after my breakup, and until that night, things had been tense but manageable. She stood by the kitchen counter, arms folded, that look of superiority plastered on her face. "I can't live with a liar," she said coldly. I froze mid-step. "A liar? What are you talking about?" She held up her phone like it was evidence. "Don't play dumb. I already heard what you said about me to Mom. How I don't pay my bills on time, how I use your money for groceries but spend mine on clothes." I stared at her, trying to piece together what was happening. I hadn't said anything like that. But Melissa wasn't the type to ask questions first. She was the type to decide, then justify it later. "I didn't say that," I told her, my voice shaking more from disbelief than anger. "Don't bother lying," she snapped. "Mom said you told her everything." That's when it clicked. My mother. The one person who'd always compared us always stirred things up. She'd done it again, fed Melissa a twisted version of something I'd said. "Melissa, please just let me explain." "I'm done explaining. You're ungrateful. I gave you a place to live and you talk behind my back." I could have fought back harder. I could have stayed and defended myself. But I knew from experience, once Melissa made up her mind, logic didn't stand a chance. So I left. I packed my things in silence while she hovered nearby, muttering insults under her breath. That night, I drove to a cheap motel outside of town and sat on the bed staring at my phone. No texts from her. None from Mom either. Just silence. I thought about all the times I'd helped her, when she couldn't afford rent, when I took care of her dog during her business trips, when I spent my weekends helping her repaint the house she now told me to leave. I tried to tell myself I'd get over it, but I didn't. The following week, I found out the truth. Melissa's friend, Tara, called me out of the blue. "Hey, I just wanted to say I'm sorry about what happened. I didn't know she'd take it that far." "What do you mean?" I asked cautiously. She hesitated. "Melissa told everyone you stole money from her purse. That's why she kicked you out." My jaw dropped. "She what?" "Yeah, she told us you took $200 last month and that you'd been lying about paying for groceries. But I saw your transfer on her phone. I know you sent her money." I sat in stunned silence. She hadn't just accused me of gossip. She'd made up a theft story to justify what she did. That night, something in me hardened. It wasn't just about being kicked out anymore. It was about her trying to destroy my name. My boss had already heard a rumor that I was bad with money, and I had no doubt where it came from. Melissa's reach was subtle but wide. She loved attention and always made herself the victim. I stopped trying to defend myself. I didn't call, didn't text. I just started planning quietly. A month later, I got a message from Mom. "Melissa's struggling with rent since you left. You should check in on her." I deleted it, but I didn't stop keeping tabs. Melissa's online posts told me everything I needed to know. She'd fallen behind on payments, her job hours were cut, and her friend group was shrinking fast. The same people she'd bragged to about kicking me out were now avoiding her. I wasn't ready to confront her. Not yet. Revenge, I realized, wasn't about quick satisfaction. It was about timing and letting the truth catch up in the most inconvenient way possible. And when it did, I'd be ready. 3 months passed before I heard from Melissa again. I had moved into a small apartment closer to work and started rebuilding my routine. Life was quiet, predictable, and that's exactly how I wanted it. Then one night, around 11:30 p.m., my phone buzzed. It was a text from her. "Hey, I really need to talk, please." I stared at the screen for a long minute. The last time we'd spoken, she'd called me a liar and a thief. Now she wanted to talk. I almost ignored it, but curiosity won. "What's going on?" I replied. She didn't answer right away. 10 minutes later, a paragraph came through. "I got evicted. My landlord gave me a week to move out. I've got nowhere to go. Can I stay with you for a bit? Just until I get things sorted out." I sat back in my chair and read the message again. Part of me wanted to laugh. The woman who'd thrown me out with zero hesitation was now asking to stay with me. But another part of me wanted to understand how she'd fallen so fast. So I agreed to meet her the next morning, at a diner near my place. When I walked in, she looked nothing like the polished, confident sister I remembered. Her hair was messy, her clothes wrinkled. She looked exhausted. "I'm sorry," she said immediately, her voice shaking. "I shouldn't have treated you like that. I was angry and Mom made it worse. I thought you were trying to make me look bad." I just listened. No interruptions, no sympathy. I wanted to hear it all. "I lost my job," she went on. "Then Tara told people about what I said. Nobody talks to me anymore. I've been trying to find a new place, but everything's too expensive." I took a sip of my coffee. "So you want to live with me now?" She nodded, eyes red. "Just for a few weeks, please." I didn't answer right away. I let the silence hang between us. Then I said, "You accused me of stealing from you. You kicked me out without letting me explain. And now you want my help." I know, she whispered. I was wrong, I'll make it up to you. I leaned forward. No, Melissa, you can't make it up to me. But I'll tell you what, I'll help you find somewhere to stay. I'll even pay for your first week, but you're not living with me. Her expression fell. You're serious? I'm serious. I saw the anger flare up in her eyes again, the same look she'd given me the night she kicked me out. You're really going to let your own sister be homeless? I shrugged. You didn't think twice when you kicked me out. Consider this balance. She muttered something under her breath and stormed out. I didn't follow her. Over the next few days, she called and texted nonstop. I ignored most of them. When I finally picked up, she was crying. I'm sleeping in my car, she said. You can't do this to me. I hesitated. A part of me still cared about her. She was my sister, after all. But another part of me remembered that motel room, the humiliation, the lies. You did this to yourself, Melissa, I said quietly. I just learned from you. Then I hung up. 2 weeks later, I heard through Mom that Melissa was staying with a coworker temporarily. She sold most of her expensive things, including that designer handbag she used to brag about, to pay off what she owed. Mom was furious with me for not helping family, but I didn't care anymore. Revenge, I realized, didn't have to be loud. It didn't have to be cruel. Sometimes it was simply refusing to save the person who never thought twice about destroying you. And the best part, Melissa knew exactly why I didn't open my door. She taught me the lesson herself.